Hello and welcome to our next lesson in this topic on the circulatory system, gas exchange and leaves. So in the previous lesson we looked at the respiratory system of humans. I said to you in that video that you needed to be able to label the different parts of the human respiratory system. So what I would like you to do, please, is I would like you to pause the video now and I would like you to have a go at naming all of these parts that have an arrow coming from them. So pause the video now, have a go please. So you should have had a go at naming each part of the human respiratory system. Answers are on the board. So you should have named this the trachea, which connects the mouth to the bronchus. The bronchus are the two tubes that split at the end of the trachea. The bronchus split into smaller parts known as the bronchioles, and at the end of every bronchiole there is an alveolus or an alveoli, an air sac. Surrounding the lungs are what are known as the pleural membrane, which stop the lungs sticking to things, keeps it nice and slippery. This is a lung which contains the bronchioles and the alveoli. We've got the ribs, and between the ribs we've got the intercostal muscles. You should have also said that from inhaled air we go down the trachea, down the bronchus, down the bronchiole, into the alveoli. When we exhale, when we breathe out, it goes from the alveoli to the bronchiole, to the bronchus, to the trachea, and out through the mouth and nose. If you found that very, very difficult, I strongly suggest you look over last week's lesson again on gas exchange and make sure you're confident with what we covered then. So today's title, looking at leaves. By the end of the lesson you should be able to name the internal parts of a leaf, you should be able to explain the structure and function of the stomata, and you should be able to explain how the structure of a leaf is adapted for photosynthesis. So, first things first, the leaf is an organ that has one job, okay? So we can start by saying the leaf is an organ of a plant, that converts energy from a light store into a chemical store. So essentially, the leaf converts light energy into chemical energy in a process known as photosynthesis, which you will do a whole topic on next year. Photosynthesis. Okay? Now, leaves have lots of adaptations that allow them to carry out photosynthesis. So we can say that leaves have adaptations that allow them to carry out photosynthesis. And we need to list some of these adaptations underneath. So the first one we need to talk about is that they are very, very wide, which increases their surface area to catch maximum sunlight. So we can say that they are wide, comma, which increases the surface area that catches light to increase the rate of photosynthesis. The rate of photosynthesis. So basically they're wider, they have a bigger surface area on which more light can be caught and therefore more photosynthesis can happen. They're very, very thin. So they are thin, to reduce the diffusion distance of carbon dioxide into the leaf So they are thin, which reduces the diffusion distance of carbon dioxide into the leaf. It's important to point out here that carbon dioxide is needed for photosynthesis. So CO2 is needed for photosynthesis. Okay, so by being thin, we're reducing the diffusion distance and the gases can move into the leaf much more easily. The final adaptation that leaves have that allow them to be efficient at carrying out photosynthesis is that they have a vascular bundle. So they have a vascular bundle, that transports water to the leaf, from the roots and carbon dioxide away from the leaf. And glucose. Away from the leaf. Now it's important because water is needed for photosynthesis to take place. So water is needed for photosynthesis. So we've said that the leaf is an organ of a plant that converts energy from light stores into chemical stores, photosynthesis. The leaf has various adaptations that allow it to carry out photosynthesis. Just 3 of those include that they are wide, which increases the surface area that catches light to increase the rate of photosynthesis. They're very, very thin, which reduces the diffusion distance of carbon dioxide into the leaf. Carbon dioxide is needed for photosynthesis. It also, we can add to here actually, so it reduces the diffusion distance of carbon dioxide into the leaf, and then we can just put /oxygen out of leaf. So oxygen is made in the process of photosynthesis and that has to diffuse out of the leaf. They have a vascular bundle that transports water to the leaf from the roots and glucose away from the leaf. Okay? Water is needed for photosynthesis to take place. So, let's have a look at the general structure of a leaf. So, put the subheading please in your books. The structure of a leaf. The structure of the leaf. And to help us with this one, we're going to take a diagram from the PowerPoint that looks like this. Okay. Probably make it a bit smaller because I need room. If you do want to see it bigger, you can have a look at the PowerPoint where this image is from. So there's 4 main layers to a leaf, okay? So we can say that there are 4 main layers to a leaf, colon. Now, just for your orientation before I move on, this is the top of a leaf. So if you pull a leaf off of a privet or a tree, this is the top part of a leaf up here, and this is the bottom part down here. Okay? All of the other bits are found in between those layers, so we're talking a very minute, a very, very small area. Okay? So the first one we need to talk about is the upper epidermis, which is this one here, the upper epidermis. And we can say that the upper epidermis covers the top of a leaf. So covers the top of the leaf and prevents water evaporating from the leaf while letting light through. Now, the upper epidermis of a leaf, it has this waxy layer. The waxy layer just stops water from evaporating, and that's really important because if the top layer let water evaporate, the leaf would dry out and it wouldn't be able to carry out photosynthesis. So we can add underneath here by saying that the wax layer prevents the loss of water. Okay. The second one we need to talk about is this one here, the palisade layer. So we've got the upper epidermis, which we've spoken about first. We're now going to talk about the palisade layer. So palisade layer the palisade layer, it contains palisade cells, contains palisade cells which carry out photosynthesis. So if you're looking at the structure of a leaf, the palisade layer is actually where photosynthesis happens. Okay, so we can add underneath here in red where photosynthesis happens. Our third layer that we need to talk about is what's known as the spongy mesophyll layer, and it involves the spongy mesophyll cells and air spaces. So our spongy mesophyll layer, and we can say that the spongy mesophyll layer has air spaces that allow gases to get to and from the palisade layer. So has air spaces that allow gases to get to / from the palisade layer. So if this is where photosynthesis happens, gases such as CO2 need to move through the gaps so that they can get to this palisade layer. Okay, and that's what the spongy mesophyll layer has. It has air spaces that allow gases to get to and from the palisade layer. Our final one, the fourth one that we need to talk about, is the lower epidermal or the lower epidermis. Lower epidermis. And the lower epidermis protects the underside of the leaf, protects the underside of the leaf and contain stomata, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Stomata. So what we've got so far, the structure of a leaf, there are 4 main layers to a leaf. The upper epidermis, which covers the top of the leaf and has a waxy layer which prevents the loss of water evaporating while still allowing light to penetrate for photosynthesis to happen. We've then got what's known as the palisade layer. The palisade layer contains palisade cells which allow the leaf to do photosynthesis. Palisade cells are where photosynthesis happens. We've got the spongy mesophyll, which allows gases in and out of the leaf so that they can get to and from the palisade cells for photosynthesis to happen. And we've got the lower epidermis, which protects the underside of the leaf and contains stomata. Now, this is our final bit that I want to talk about, these stomata. Okay, so if we refresh our screen, if we send it back to black, and if we put our final keyword for the day, stomata. Stomata. Okay. Now, stomata can be defined as small holes in the bottom surface of a leaf. So small holes in the lower epidermis of a leaf that are surrounded by guard cells, full stop. Okay, so stomata are small holes in the lower epidermis of a leaf that are surrounded by guard cells. This is how gases get into and out of the leaf. So we can say that the stomata, I'm going to put it in regs, it's important, the stomata allow gases both into and out of the leaf. Okay, so if we just pull up our PowerPoint again, I've got a diagram of a stomata, or a couple of stomata here, and if we can paste it in. So guard cells are these green cells here. You can see the two nucleus and you can see the nucleus here, and the stomata is the hole in the middle. So the stomata is the hole, the guard cells are what surround the hole. The guard cells either open or close the stomata, okay, depending on if the leaf wants to keep gases in or get rid of them. So this is kind of like a little mouth. In fact, the word stomata is Greek for little mouth. So these open and close. The guard cells are like your lips. The hole in the middle of your mouth is like the stomata, and these let gases in and out. So we can say that guard cells control if a stomata is open or closed. Full stop. We can say that stomata are closed if the leaf wishes to keep gases and water inside. Now that's an important point that a lot of people seem to forget. Water can also escape through the stomata. So we can say that water also can leave a leaf through open stomata. Okay. Now before we move on, before we finish today's lesson, an examiner's favourite question is to give you an image with stomata drawn inside it. Okay. So this is an examiner's favourite question. I'm just going to demonstrate to you now how you can do it. So I'm going to draw some stomata. Look at that, that's brilliant, that is. I know you're all there now saying, why isn't Mr. Abraham an art teacher? That's incredible. I bet some of you are crying. It's that good. Anyway, so there's my stomata, and we can see that we've got 1 stomata, 2 stomata, 3 stomata. Okay? So I'm just going to put 1 stomata, 2 stomata, and I'm going to put 3 stomata. Now, what the question will usually ask is how many stomata can be found in 1 metre squared of a leaf. And what they will usually do is on the image they will give you a scale bar, and the scale bar will usually be something like 0.1 metre or any other value really, and by 0.1 metre. Again, I'm going over this because it's an examiner's favourite question. So if we do 0.01 times 0.01, and I've got my calculator out, 0.01 times 0.01, we've at the moment got an area of 0.01. So to calculate this, we can do 0.1 times 0.1 to give us 0.01 metres squared. The area of this image is 0.01 metres squared. We have got 3 stomata, okay? So there are 3 stomata in that area. So 0.01 metre squared has 3 stomata because we've counted them. We want to know how much is in 1 metre squared of a leaf. So we can times 0.01. So we can take 0.01 and we can times it by 100. The reason we times it by 100 is because that will now give us 1 metre squared. We would need to do the same to this. So we would need to do 3 stomata times 100 to give us 300 stomata. Okay? So if you are faced with a question like this in an exam, you would need to first of all find the area, you would need to count the amount of stomata in that area, and then times everything up to get to the size that the examiner is asking for. So, if we have a look at our learning objectives for today, you should now be able to tell me the internal parts of a leaf, you should be able to explain the structure and function of the stomata, and you should be able to tell me how the structure of a leaf allows it to carry out photosynthesis. I hope this lesson has been useful to you. Please drop a comment below in Google Classrooms if there is something you don't get, or drop me an email directly and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Until the next video, please take care.